Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone out there, this is director producer Jessica Earnshaw. And um, I, I think what's really fascinating about a movie like this is, you're watching it and you sort of forget that you had to somehow find this story. It's so enveloping right from the get-go. But you're like, unless you were somehow like close personal friends from high school or something, like how did you stumble into these people's lives? And then reading your director's statement was really interesting, sort of explaining the background of what you were doing that led you into their orbit. So give us a bit of that in your own words.
Yeah, so I was working on a story on aging in prison. It was a photo essay that I was doing at the same prison her and her mother were incarcerated at. So I had just spent a lot of time there. I had been there for a number of months. I ended up, I was photographing this elderly woman, Norma, who was friends with Rosemary. And so I spent a lot of time with Rosemary. And then Rosemary told me she had a daughter, and I met Jacinta. And, I originally had thought I was going to do a photo essay on some of the women in the prison. And then when I ended up interviewing Jacinta and Rosemary for that, and was interviewing all my photo subjects for caption material, I just realized it would be way more interesting to film them together, just because they were just so interesting, their dynamic. They were finishing each other's sentences and laughing, and they seemed a lot more like best friends. So I was very curious to understand how she had ended up following in her mother's footsteps. And that's kind of how the whole thing began. It was just kind of, I just, stumbled upon them, really.
And did anything then happen with that other project?
Yeah, the Aging in Prison project, or
Well, I mean, like
yeah.
the original project, obviously, like you then moved into something totally different here. But
Mhm.
I mean, was this an evolution or did these become two separate things?
Um, it was, I'd say it was an evolution. I had started, so around the time I met Rosemary, I was coming out of the Aging in Prison project. I started photographing the women in the prison. They were all, between the ages of mid 20s to mid 30s. And I was actually photographing in more of the like high security part of the prison. And I was photographing this girl named Susie, who, I didn't end up continuing that project because I interviewed Jacinta and Rosemary together, but I had been around Jacinta for a number of weeks in the high security part of the prison. And I just, she's actually in the background of a lot of my photos, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it was an evolution. It didn't end up, I still have a lot of those photos that I've been kind of using around this project, because I also like partly photographed it. So they've come in handy as far as the story comes, as the story came together, and how I've been using the photography with it. But yeah, it just kind of progressed into the film.
So I'm curious when Jacinta comes on. I guess it'll be funny because you'll tell this story before she has a chance to hear it. But I'm sure you guys have done this so many times. Tell us about the process of getting her on board with having a more intimate, direct sort of connection with you and your camera coming out of prison, which goes well beyond what the initial connection was. Like
um,
what was the, I mean, she says late into the film, I thought that this was going to be like a great opportunity to sort of contribute as a success story. So she had
mhm.
something in mind when you guys were first talking, and I'm curious to know how you pitched it and what she was hoping for.
Yeah, so at the very beginning, so first it was kind of, I was thinking more photos, but I think when I first talked to her about it, it was, I did ask her after I interviewed them together, that I had interviewed them probably 3 months before she got out, and I ended up coming back. So I kind of sat on it, that interview, and I kind of was like, this is just so, I couldn't get them out of my mind, really. So I ended up coming back to the prison and asking her if I could continue photograph or filming, and it would be a short film. So I was going to film her as she left the prison and then into her sober house. And at the time in Maine, a lot of women coming and men coming out of prison who had over 9 months, they would lose their medical care. And so it made it very difficult for people coming out of prison who had any kind of, addiction issues to get back their medical, So I was curious to kind of see how that would play out. I knew she was going to be going to a sober house, and she had all these, dreams in reuniting with her daughter. I didn't think I'd be around long enough for her to end up going back into her addiction. I never intended that to be what this film was. I really just thought it was going to be a short film looking at her recovery. So it was kind of like a gradual conversation over a long period of time, really, because it started as that. And then when she ended up using, I was really unsure I could continue working on this because it was just very painful to watch. At that point, it had been about 60 days where we had spent every single day together. And I just didn't think I was strong enough really to continue working on this project. And, but we kind of continued it wasn't like she fell back completely into it. It was kind of like a slow process of like, she was okay for a bit and then she'd fall back in and then she'd be okay. And then it got to, and I was, so anyways, it was kind of a longer conversation. And ultimately, Jacinta, I was actually trying to help her too during this time to try to, get her help if she wanted it. And ultimately she didn't want help. And it was kind of like a conversation of, well, you're here now. And she was, her story wasn't where she didn't see it ending where it was, where we were at that moment. So we just continued together.
Well, since you
Oh, look, she's joining.
into that moment. Oh, hey. Hello.
Hey, Jacinta. Oh, I think there she is.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, sorry about all that.
Oh, no worries. We're so glad you could join us. So we were just talking about a little bit about the process of deciding to make the film and kind of the initial discussions about what was it that sort of maybe convinced Jessica that there was a film, and you also like what made you agree to want to be filmed. So I'm curious, from your side of this, like what was the allure of having the camera right at this particular precarious moment in your life? Because it's one thing in the sort of the stability, I guess, of being with your mother, incarcerated, but then coming out with so many things about to change in your life, having your life documented at that point must have been sort of very uncertain.
It was. It was also kind of like, it was surreal. I didn't think about what was really happening. I was still in like an addictive mind. So I don't really think that I thought too much about it, other than the fact that I knew that I had a lot of things that the world needed to hear, and I had somebody great to listen.
Mm. And I guess there is there does beg this one question, which I guess is not throwing shade on the documentarian, but when someone comes and has a camera and says, I want to film your story, that you don't necessarily know it's going to wind up on Hulu, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's sort of like, of course, eventually your story needs to be told in a compelling enough way that it's gonna be something that a company like Hulu wants to eventually, share with the world. So to some extent, it's sort of like a work in progress until you know that there's a feature film there. And so I'm curious, like, we were just talking a little bit about the moment when it goes from a short and becomes kind of a longer project. And that's also a different commitment that you're making. between the two of you. So let's talk about that moment when it's sort of a bigger commitment than just maybe a short film, but going into a feature.
Um, there's a part in the film that I spoke about um, addicts or unhealthy people reaching for that healthy person and just hoping that they learn from them rather than pull them down. Jessica was able to stay very neutral in my life while giving a ton of support actually. And because there was such a great balance between her filming and her as a human, um, it made those rough moments seem not so rough or not so lonely. And um, a lot of times I forget the camera was rolling.
Mm, yeah.
Mm.
Which is, of course, the real talent of a vérité filmmaker is to be so at ease with the subject that they are comfortable doing things that maybe most normal people would not do with the presence of a camera around them. So I'm curious about the moment in the car after you see your daughter, after you see Caylynn. You know, that's a moment that it seems to me you have on your mind, you know, quite well in advance of when we see it in the film. But Jessica, how much did you know and anticipate that moment happening before we actually see it?
Um, I think leading up to that moment, like, I mean, I don't know. I think at the time I didn't see it coming at all. But then in hindsight, I did see it coming. I just was like, oh my God, like there were all these signs, that I should have seen. And even looking back at the footage, I was like, oh my God, of course, but in the moment, I think I was so with Jacinta on her journey and just really believing in her desire to just, beat this, that I was with her in that. And I just, um, I was, I was surprised when she did, use that night. But yeah, in hindsight, yeah, it's very 2020.
There's a lot of really um, interesting things to cover in terms of having this film exist in the world in terms of its relationship to the other members of your family, Jacinta. And I'd love to know how you both approached having your family participate in it, both when it was happening and now as it gets sort of shared with the world. So when you came out of prison in the beginning, tell us a little bit about um, I guess introducing Jessica to your family and the fact that this project was getting made and how that she sort of became a part of the fabric of your life at that point.
Um, it wasn't easy. Jessica is a likable person, but she was also a stranger to my family, and they're very welcoming. So I guess, to Jessica, they were really cool. They liked her. Um, it did it brought us together in different ways. And it separated my family in other ways. So um having them be genuine and raw and vulnerable because I'm asking them to be, it's not for the selfish addict Jacinta. It was genuine, and I feel like my family felt that for me, and they were willing to contribute anything they could.
And Jessica, for your part, what were the greater challenges of so many pieces of this environment and these relationships to have to forge?
Um, I don't know. I felt like the relationships were pretty natural. Like I think that's the thing that had me continue going so long on the project and probably could have kept me going even longer. We didn't have to you know, start editing and finishing the film. But I don't know. I just really love Jacinta's family. Like I just, I really enjoyed my time with Jacinta, and I just, love her dad and her daughter, I mean, that love you feel in the film is just
Yeah.
very real, and I really enjoyed just kind of hanging out with all of them. So that wasn't difficult at all. And I feel like even forging, like as Jacinta said, like those relationships were very easy. I think for me, just because we did get along so well. I think, the difficulty was sometimes, it was, I think seeing Jacinta, in those difficult moments was hard at times, just because, I cared about her. But yeah, I mean, that was definitely the most difficult part of it.
It is. This film is remarkable in the ability to, I think, convey the power of the love in this family, uh, despite all of this adversity, and I think that that's quite amazing. And I honestly, Jacinta, I think your daughter is quite an amazing person. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
congratulations. Tell us a little bit about when they saw the film for the first time, and like how did that how was that presented to them? Like, give us a sense of your experience watching it for the first time. How did it feel as a representation of your life?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I honestly like the first few times I watched it, the first time I didn't remember it really at all.
Mm,
I pick out different things from it here and there. But as far as my family, my little brother he's not to the point where he's ready to see it. He supports me and we're the best of friends. And if, I need him to be by my side for something, he's there. But he doesn't want to relive the trauma he already knows.
mm,
Um, my older brother, he took it rather well. Caylynn and my father, I feel like it helped them understand that I didn't just consciously make this decision to wake up every day and be an addict and to get so caught up in chaos and drama and confusion that I forgot who I was and didn't smile. So it was insightful for them to see my side. But it was also insightful for me to see their side as well, I guess I should say. Seeing Caylynn at some of her vulnerable moments, or when, she was just wanting her mother figure, gave me a lot of strength because I'm that person today she can count on, and I don't ever want to make her feel that way again. It was a mistake, and I can never change that, but I'll do my best to never do it again now.
mm.
Mm.
The there's moments towards the end of the film, Jessica, where even I feel like despite all of the intimacy that you shared with this family, you're still learning new things that obviously change your perspective on things. And I saw it that you had done a lot of kind of background interviews, things that were not really even used in the film. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached researching, things that aren't necessarily verite footage, but still useful for your process?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I just wanted to, so I mean, I feel like so much of this film is about, how did Jacinta end up where she, um, how did she end up following in her mother's footsteps in certain ways? And for me, I just really wanted to understand as best I could the timeline of Jacinta's life. And I feel like with trauma, you know, there's a lot of, the memory can be kind of foggy for people. And so I would ask sometimes Jacinta her memory of various things, and I'd ask Rick, and I'd ask her mom, Rosemary. And I feel like everybody kind of had different dates or different memories. And so I basically created like just for myself, like this timeline of her life. And I went and I interviewed like her high school teacher, or her middle school principal, different teachers, people that Jacinta was very close to in her life, you know, just as many people, like cousins, like, and I just kind of wrote on this timeline when things happened. And it was really helpful for me because I wanted to be as I didn't want to include anything in the film that wasn't like, if someone told me something that wasn't truthful, I couldn't verify it based on a lot of people saying the same thing. I didn't want to include it. I wanted to make sure it was as accurate as possible based on the timeline I knew. And also it just gave me a lot better of an understanding of Jacinta, and I think also the more I learned about her as a little kid, the more I could see her and Caylynn, that there's such a, people would describe Jacinta as a kid as being like super, super smart and like a daredevil. Like her grandmother described her as like this crazy, like fearless little child on the playground, and I don't know, it just really helped me kind of like fully understand who I was, following, especially because it is so much about generational trauma and generational cycles and how do you break them, so I felt like I needed to know a younger version of Jacinta, and Jacinta, told me she has so many stories from that time in her life, but it was good to hear from other people as well.
Are there things, I mean, the real trouble with a verite film is you don't necessarily always have a natural conclusion to a story about someone's life. So tell us a little bit about how you had to kind of anticipate certain things about when you were going to finish filming. Clearly, obviously, in this film, there is an incarceration, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's when you had planned you were going to finish. I mean, you might have only had a certain amount of time allotted for filming, and then you had to pick back up the camera. Tell us a little bit about the logistics of that.
I felt like I wanted to end on a positive note, and Jacinta was doing so well she had gotten she's doing sociology from University of Maine Augusta, and I felt like I really wanted it to end on her and Caylynn, because that's really what the story in a lot of ways is about. So that felt like a really natural ending, and I just wanted it to end where she was at, which was in such a great place, and then I don't know, I think it is hard to know when to stop. And, if I really had my way, it would have been like a 6-hour series. No one wanted me to do that. They thought it would be too long. I was like, what are you talking about? I could have kept going, but I think stopping on Caylynn and where she was at just felt totally natural.
I mean, it is sort of a roll of the dice, right? Because you do have to stop production for a while as that time goes by in prison, right?
Kind of. We shot right until the end. Like I was shooting like that last moment of Caylynn, where she talks about selfishness and selflessness.
Yeah.
I shot that like in October or November of 2019. We locked picture at the very early December of that year. So that last scene of Caylynn where they reunite, that's the end of August. Yeah. We shot to the very, very end.
It's such a wonderful scene.
Yeah, I know.
So obviously, it's not every day that we get to have the subject of a documentary on here. So let's just fully dive into how are things now. I mean, this has obviously been a rough year and a half for everyone.
Yeah. Actually, overall, my past year has been great. There's been like a lot of learning process, and it's a lot less learning about myself. I did a lot of that like during my incarceration, and more learning about how society really works, how what I would say normal people live, going to work. I feel like I work forever to make nothing, to pay bills. But it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling knowing that I'm in a clean home and a healthy relationship, and my daughter's okay. And if she needs help with homework, I'm here. If she wants to come visit, I'm here. If she wants anything, I'm able to be here. Not gonna say it's been perfect or that it's been easy. Um, I still get frustrated with life. I still get frustrated with my inability to cope. Um, and I can cope, but it just seems like I have to work so much harder than the rest of the world to get to a peaceful place. And it's because I can't just focus on coping in the moment or healing in the moment. I have to worry about healing in the moment and staying sober through that process because that's typically when I would use. When it comes time to real life is when I'm used to having a vice, and not having that has built me very strong. It has taught me um, what I can and can't endure, and um, I've made myself proud that I've made the people around me proud, and people want to hear my voice. They want to invest. They want to know how to help other people in my situation. I feel like I've definitely accomplished what I've more than what I ever thought I would have in a year.
Feel free to not answer this, but does that responsibility of the public voice make it easier or harder for you in the story?
Um, so I don't think that the film influences anything in my life. I was once asked if I thought the film was the reason why my mother and I's relationship shifted.
Mm.
And I haven't stopped thinking about that question, but I know for a fact that it didn't. Um, I was ready to change on my own, and growing stronger within myself would have made me feel comfortable making that boundary. And um, I'm able to accept. You're fine. Sorry, Kaylin just came in. Um, I'm able to accept a lot.
Um, so I am seeing a question out here from Dave Gutman. And if anyone else wants to ask a question, feel free to type it up for the Q&A box. So this is a question about documentary ethics and intervention in terms of moments in which, you're Jessica, you're following someone and there's dangerous or self-destructive acts or criminal acts on camera. At what point do you have to intervene or not?
Um, well, as far as the film goes, we could talk, I guess, about the scene where there's a laptop that's taken. I mean, I don't feel like, and I guess also the using, I don't feel like it's my place to intervene. I think, I'm a visitor in Jacinta's life, and I'm not there to tell her or force her to do anything. I think what I did do and where my line was that when she started to use, I tried everything I could do and just trying to convince her not to use, try to like bring her to a sober, like a treatment center, offer her anything I could do and try to convince her like multiple times to stop. But if a person doesn't want to stop, they're not going to stop, and there's no convincing them otherwise. So I think where I felt my responsibility was as a filmmaker was in the edit, to be very responsible in what I was showing. And then Jacinta knew, there was not going to be any kind of major surprises. I also, showed Jacinta the film before we locked picture on it to make sure she was okay with the film. But also when it came to any kind of criminal activity, like I went to, so I made a promise that there would be nothing in this film that they could get arrested for or whatever. So I checked out that scene with the district attorney in the county that would arrest her,
Fascinating.
made sure that she wasn't going to get arrested and there was going to be no charges. And there wasn't enough to arrest her on that anyways, but I've been assured that there's going to be no criminal charges. And if there was going to be, I would never have put it in the film.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Actually, what? It's interesting that you brought Jacinta in for the edit. I'm curious what the most difficult part of the edit was for you. actually, and Jacinta, if there was anything in particular that you wrestled with when you first, I mean, if there were questions that the two of you really, you spent a lot of time working through.
Well, I should just say that I should just into the cut of the film when we had about a week or two left in the edit, just to like make my main, I wasn't so much worried about the drug use because, you know, we had so many conversations about that. For me, it was more of the moment of what happens between Rosemary and Jacinta. And I wanted to make sure that that was okay with her because that is her trauma, not mine. And I wanted to make sure that she was okay with that. So that was the thing that was the most challenging thing for me in the edit, because I was like, what is this film without that? Because if that was something that Jacinta was like, no way, then we were going to take it out. Like, and I prepared, I don't even know if Jacinta, like I prepared our editor, George, and we were like, okay, we had another cut. We were going to have to take that out. But I'm so glad that she was okay with it because I think it is such an important part of this, of the film and the story. But I'll let Jacinta jump in.
I mean, I don't really
Question.
have much, I don't really don't have much on that to say. The only thing I really ever said to Jessica is, I'm trusting you, please don't abuse that. And the way that she told my story in picture, I'm grateful for.
Okay, there's a follow-up from Dave. There was one scene that she appeared to, that Jacinta was driving under the influence, not only putting herself at risk, but the community at large. So this goes back to filmmaker intervention.
Yeah, I was, there was a person in the front seat with Jacinta. I actually was watching in that moment. I was watching Jacinta, like to make sure she didn't fall asleep through the camera. So I caught that moment. And when it was happening, I was, you know, yelling at Billy to hit Jacinta. So it was all, you don't hear my voice and everything happen in the background, but it is all surveillance on her eyes and then yelling at Billy. And then we stopped driving together after that.
Yeah.
But it felt like a really important moment because that's, you know, it happens, you know, that is the truth of, you know, not just with Jacinta, but I'm sure many people when they're using at that level.
Okay, we have a question here. This is a question for Jacinta. Do you and Caylynn get therapy together as mother-daughter? Did your daughter look at the documentary and you're both such brilliant minds, and she wishes you all the best.
Thank you for that, first of all. Caylynn and I don't do therapy together. We did watch the film with her therapist who had been doing some EMDR. That's what it is, yeah? EMDR.
Or she's doing trauma therapy with her.
Yeah. Right. And we waited till Caylynn was at a good place to be able to show it to her. There's many times that they were like, hey, you think Kay's ready? And I was like, nope, don't press it. And basically, I was seeing different things in Caylynn, and I thought it was a good time.
And I guess really, is there anything that this film is also helping to sort of mobilize in terms of further public activism towards shedding light on addiction? And I mean,
so honestly, much with anything in your life that you do, if you're going about it the right way or the smart way, anything you do, you use to build a resume. I'm absolutely hoping that I can include Q&As like this and take my experiences. It's not necessarily, I don't care if it's on TV. I don't care if it's, you know, in Augusta at the legislative meeting. If it's opening doors for people to listen and to encourage action, absolutely. I plan to do so.
We also, we have this whole social impact campaign that Jacinta has been crafting. We basically very early on brought on a social impact producer, and it was really important to us that whatever we designed for a social impact campaign, it was what Jacinta felt like was most important to her life and her, because this is based on her story. So we ended up partnering with with Dream Corps, and we're going to be supporting their legislation that Jacinta can talk probably more about. But it's the dignity of incarcerated women, and we'll be supporting their legislation, and that's all about making sure that children can safely visit their parents, their mothers, and are not too far away from their parents if their mothers are, incarcerated. And do you want to jump in on any of that?
Basically just to make it, take the rights away from the children, from the parents, and give it to the children. So because of whatever a mother did in the past, doesn't reflect on whether or not she does or doesn't see her child, or if they had DHS involvement when they were 15 with their now 15-year-old child and they have a 2-year-old, because that happened 13 years ago doesn't mean you have the right to, withhold this child. And it also gives that child the right to say, no, I'm not ready. I don't want to see my parents right now. And I feel like that's important. I feel like the way children visit their parents during incarceration is huge. Because a lot of times that's when some of the only times that a child will see their parents sober. So they absorb that time more than the rest. It's going to stay stuck in their heart. And if they're in a hospital setting, or a jail setting where they're going in and being patted down or run through machines to see their parents, that's going to diminish what their, the greater joy that they could take from that visit. And I feel like stuff like that's important to know. Those are lifetime memories. Like, that's what builds a child and a bond with their parent, whether it be their father or their mother. Getting that first sense of security is your child's first hope. And if you give the parent the chance to see that light one time, promise you it could change a life. May not, but I know that it can.
I know you're on the East Coast, right? So we'll just wrap with one last one, which is, how is your relationship with your mom now?
Good. My mother is in recovery. She's in a rehab, actually. She's doing well. And one of the best things lately, my mom has called me just about every day to tell me she's proud of me. And for Rosemary to slow down and notice, it's very hard to do. So it's been great. But one thing I do want to say about my film, I made a statement that I just realized, and I had at one point said my addiction is way stronger than I am. And I just want the world to know, like, I was very naive in that moment. I do not believe that. But yeah.
There are some things posted here in the Q&A box that I think would be just good for you to take a look at. They're more sort of statements for the two of you than questions for everyone in the audience. But I just wanted to quickly reiterate that the film. Tell us about the release. It's coming to Hulu this week.
Yeah, on Friday.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the resources for what Jacinta was talking about a moment ago are those available easily? Are they easy to find? Should we put something in the chat?
Yeah, I probably the Dream Corps Dignity for Incarcerated Women's Act would be something. We're in the process of building our campaign right now, and it will be on, if you follow jacintafilm.com, we will be posting things there. We're also hoping to be using the film. It looks like we'll be using the film with federal judges, the train younger judges coming into the system, which is kind of a new development that we're really excited about. So all fun stuff, but we'll be kind of keeping track of some of the stuff on the website, but definitely Dream Corps and that legislation is definitely something I would post it in, but
Did I get that right? Dream Corps.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if are you at your computer, Jacinta?
Yeah.
Do you want to post in the chat I'm on my phone, so it's really hard for me to type in and then
So you just want like the home page?
or the yeah.
Website, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so that people can see it before we let you go.
Yeah. This has been a very fun conversation, though.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I'm really glad that we also were able to get Disney to host the screening on their platform, because I've been now that I'm back in the office, I do worry sometimes about like the bandwidth, and it's nice to know that I've got the power of the Disney Corporation to handle that side of things. But this was really wonderful, and I'm so glad that we were able to have both of you on the call. And I wish you both the best. And if there's ever a chance to come visit the university, please don't be strangers.
Yes, we're actually going. We're going to California at the end of the week. Jacinta's first time.
Oh, wow.
And she's always wanted to go to California, so it's gonna be very fun.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well,
but yeah, it comes out on Hulu on Friday.
And I'm trying to put the.
Oh, are you having difficulty with that? Maybe it's.
Here we go.
Oh. Are you typing in the chat?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Oh, I see. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I see. It's I might retype it because it just came to us.
Oh.
Dreamcorps.org. Oh, I misspelled it. Sorry. All right. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Okay, bye.